Hello everybody, I'm here with Poseidon again today, and I want to share another step on our journey with you and give you a little bit more of an idea of what else we could do or how we can progress with the primary issue of this horse being in training with me while he is also dealing with a condition called sidebone, which is a potentially painful sort of situation in his front feet, where there are those bone spurs. I want to call them bone spurs. They're like calcified cartilage on the left and right of the coronary band. Very small apparently, but still could be potentially quite painful if we're making any kind of small turns or making him go into a small tight circle. So we have to, consider that. I have to be creative, and I'm trying. And our first task has been for these last few rides to see if we can overcome this habit that I think it is, the habit of going into a bit of a shuffling trot or a jog or a jig, whatever you want to call it, while we're just trying to walk relaxed around on the long rein or even with a little bit of rein contact. And so the last video that I posted about him was us trying out a different type of rein contact where I raised my hands up to the front a little bit and kind of gave him little incremental little sort of vibrational cues to say, please don't lean so much on the forehand, so that he can take up a little bit more weight on his hind end, and I actually got to use my lower legs a little bit, which that was quite nice to feel. And now this time I thought I'm going to mix it up a little bit, because all this work in the walk there's not a lot of sort of energy expended, and he's a young horse. He's only 6, and he does need a little bit of a workout. So this morning I lunged him on these big, super long, super wide circles, walk and trot, for about 15-20 minutes. And so now I'm going to see if that makes a difference, if he has a little bit less sort of the energy sort of that he stored and kind of keeps possibly kind of held tight to him, and that might cause him to go into a little bit of these shuffling trot steps. And so without talking too much more, I'm going to go into what we've been doing before. I'm breathing in and just going to see how his walk is with me today. I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Walk on a long rein, and there's that little tiny beginning shuffle, and I just kind of gave a little bit of a tug on the inside rein. So I'm going to try a little bit of a different tact every once in a while, so not want to go straight into real rein contact. And there is, like that is a little bit of a shuffle. There it is. And I'm just going to let him do this here for a moment and see if he stops maybe by himself. That's another thing that I haven't done before yet. Yeah. No, this seems to be what he wants to be in. And then, oh, look at that. Then he stops suddenly. So that's when it's up to him. And I think the stopping has to do with something that he sees in the distance there. So I'm just going to have these ongoing conversations with him without trying to interfere too much, and maybe that is a sort of a long way to address all of these issues, but I just want to just really, really sort of connect with him and not be right on top of him from the get-go. So we're going to go breathe in again and just go into a little bit of a slow. I have a tiny little bit of knee pressure on him, possibly to sort of slow him down. And then I just did a tiny, like every time he starts to jig like that, I just do the most minimal little rein contact. And look at this. This is actually not so bad right now. And there's the tiny jig. There are 2 lines of thoughts about all of this. One is to say, let the horse make the mistake and correct then, so that they understand that there is a negative or a more work-related consequence to their certain types of behavior. And see, then when I do a little bit too much, he stops, which is interesting. So it's either stop or jigging in his book. I'm going to let him stand here and look again for a moment. Breathe in again, and let's see if we can have another go at this. And again, I'm going to be very super mindful of not interfering too much, but I also don't want him to continue to think that it's okay to just either jog or stand. And those are seemingly these two options that he has on his mind right now. So the other way of thinking about this is to say, I'm not going to let him continue with this habit, and I will correct or inhibit him before he makes the mistake. So rather than schooling after the mistake, and I'm going to do that a little bit now, because my experience with him so far is that he does go into a little bit of that glazed over phase if we just let him just do his own thing. So I'm going to just gently start to take up the reins, and then he's stretching a little bit. Good, good, good. And I'm actually getting to use my lower leg a little bit now that I have this rein contact and my hands a little bit farther forward, like I did last time. And I'm not going to let him plunge down. I'm just going to, in the lightest little way, apply a little bit of a boundary here. You know, it's not to make him uncomfortable, but just to say, look, this is also possible. And that actually seems to somehow work. And now I get the first snort. I haven't had a snort while we were lunging, so that always says to me that there's a little bit of a held up tension inside of a horse's body and mind, perhaps. Come. So that was his idea, to stop here, and I don't really want him to just stop on his own accord yet. Just want to say, in terms of leadership, even in the mildest sense, I am the one who says, come, come, come. When and at what speed we're going and where. So he's a little bit, you can tell, he's a little bit, it's like, wow, just what's going on now? I don't get to lean so much. And exactly, and I have to accept a little bit of the lower leg that I'm applying. That's, you know, probably what's going on in his mind right now. So now I'm going to let him stop here. Now it's on my terms, not on his, and I'm going to let him process for a moment. And I feel like we're on the right track with this methodology. You know, this is kind of a little bit of a interesting but also logical kind of way of approaching the situation, because, you know, like I said before, when he doesn't get to plunge down with his head so far, then he has to somehow make up for it. And the only way to make up for it, when I kind of keep his frame a little bit lighter in front, is to take up more weight behind. And ultimately, that will strengthen him, and that will also, you know, probably be really a good thing for the sidebone condition, because if he's not so much on the forehand, then there's less stress on the foot. So I'm going to pick up the reins again and very gently just say, hello, can we do this a little bit more? So, good boy. So, and I get that. That is a little bit something for him to think about. This is only the second time that we've been doing it like this. So I'm going to change directions here. And I'm just going to say here, 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 here. And you may or may not be able to see, but I'm actually using my lower legs a little bit. And he's pushing into that a little bit. I think this is what the stopping is. And that is also okay, because that is possibly part of what we call the into-pressure syndrome in a horse. You know, it's sort of like a reflex that when something pushes into them, that they will push back into it. And if that's not dealt with correctly and too much ongoing pressure, then, you know, that may cause resistance in a horse too. And with him, you know, it's such a fine line between him saying, I can't use my legs at all, he won't tolerate it, or he will run, or I am saying to him, please don't plunge down so much. Let me have a little bit of a lighter contact with you. And this hand position seems to be sort of the most conducive for him to understand what I want and what it is that I want him or don't want him to do. And I feel like this is, like I said before, at this stage, not the most elegant way of approaching a walk, and we're far from having a regular rhythm. But we're starting to have at least a chance where I say, come on here, let's go left, right, lower legs, come on. Tiny little bit of a, tiny little bit of a reminder to him not to plunge onto the reins, and then I'm going to let him stop here. and process. And that is sort of, I think, the beginning of how I feel that we might be making some progress. We've got actually quite a few steps, and I want to say probably a couple rounds in each direction. And that's actually all I really, again, want to do with him today. I want him to just think about that this is how we're going to walk. We're going to walk with a normal, classic riding position and the aid system that allows the horse to understand ultimately not just that we're walking together, and it's not just like a little shuffle where I can't use my legs, but also ultimately I would like for him to understand through my leg, seat, and weight and rein aids what kind of walk we're attempting to have together, and that is ultimately why it's important. Otherwise you could say, well, why don't you just leave him alone? If you could just get him to relax. But I think really the bottom line is with this horse that he's not necessarily anxious. I think it's a habit. And he thinks it's okay to just jig around. And in that context, he basically says to the rider, if you give me a long rein and you don't touch me with your legs, then I'll shuffle around. But then as soon as you put your legs on, I'll go faster. And to me, that's just, we're throwing away the whole gait of the beautiful walk gait and all the things that we can do eventually with them. All the three collected, the medium, free walk, those different variations in the walk. And then, perhaps a little bit of lateral work with him, if we can do it without him being in pain. I think that there's a good chance for that if we teach it correctly and slowly. And so for today, that's all I wanted to have with him, this conversation, and hope this was kind of interesting to you. It always is to me. And thanks for watching, and thank you, Poseidon.